Welcome back to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined, as always, by the dynamic duo of Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke, who I have to say are continuing their fine form throughout the season. And my producer, Ryan, has kindly figured out our strike rate on podcast best bets, Mark, but it's 13 wins out of 16, which equates to over 81% strike rate. So, Mark, if we kept this going all season now, I think it would be quite extraordinary. But it's good to enjoy these moments because we know our good old friend Variance is always lurking around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an exceptional hit rate at this stage of the season. Obviously, smallish samples, the bigger they get, the harder it will be to sustain that kind of number. But if you think professional punters are aiming to win sort of 55% of their bets or around that level, we're floating well above that at the minute and enjoying it so far. So, fingers crossed the international break hasn't kind of halted our progress and we can get back into winning ways this weekend.
Well, Adrian, I think I have you down as one behind Mark on the podcast best bet. So you're keeping pace with a strong running performance here, Mark Adrian. So I'm very proud of you, I have to say.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of myself. Yeah, look, Mark's been doing this a lot longer than I have. And look, he's award-winning, isn't he? He's
award-winning. Yeah.
Maybe it's time I got nominated.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, it's good to sort of be on his coattails. I'll take that.
No, absolutely, guys. And look, joking aside, we love listening to you guys every week, the content you provide. And look, we keep the same structure. Those 4 big games, love hearing your opinion on the big games. And then we get into the nitty gritty of EFL, other Premier League bets, European bets, and of course, our long shots and best bets. So yeah, if you are watching or listening on the podcast, hit that like button. Much appreciated on the YouTube channel. It takes us 2 seconds, helps us get our content out to a wider audience, and it would be much appreciated. Other than that, we'll get to what is a pretty decent card at the 4 games, incidentally. Liverpool, Everton, Man City, Brighton, Chelsea, Arsenal, Villa versus West Ham. I think as 4 marquee games go, they're pretty consistently strong here. So we'll start at Anfield with Liverpool versus Everton, the first game back since the international break. It's Liverpool 135 here, Everton 9.2. The draw is available at 5.8. Incidentally, we're recording this during the international break, a couple of days early, if those prices have moved ever so slightly. Both teams to score yes is available at 1.7. And no is 2.16. Again, they'll push out a little bit closer to the time. The Asian handicap line, currently Everton has a 1.5 goal head start, and the goal line here is 3.5. So we'll start off with you, Mark, in terms of Liverpool this season and that performance against Brighton, because I don't know, maybe the first 20, 30 minutes, I thought Liverpool were trying to match Brighton too much. They got the 2 goals, and throughout the second half, you always thought they were going to win the game. So it was almost a surprise when Lewis Dunk equalised. What was your assessment of that performance? Then going into this game, I presume you're expecting them to come through this home Merseyside derby.
Yeah, I am. I think you labelled it a 9.5 out of 10 Super Sunday before the international break, and on paper those 2 matches were exceptional and mouthwatering. But I was quite underwhelmed actually by both. Really, the Liverpool Brighton game was. Yeah, I mean,
just on Mark, I was watching it with a mate of mine. We thought it was one of the worst 2-2 draws we'd seen, and a lot of podcasts thought it was a really good game. I personally didn't think it was great. Obviously, the second game wasn't either, but
yeah, I wasn't sort of captivated by it at all. We were supposed to go away on Sunday, and I managed to persuade the missus to postpone it until Monday because of the matches.
9.5.
And I would have given it probably a 5 out of 10 at best after what I saw, really. And Liverpool did deserve to probably win that match, and I had a sort of pro-Liverpool based position on that fixture too, and it didn't come through, so I was bitterly disappointed by that. But Liverpool came into this season, a lot of people were talking about them as the potential side to challenge Man City this time around, or at least be close enough to them. But as we said from the outset, really, they're going through a major midfield transition, and it's not been straightforward, and it's not going to be straightforward to sort of just overhaul such a key area of the field and expect things to just slot in straight away. And I think obviously injuries haven't helped, but you see a player as good as Alexis McAllister, he's not a number 6, and he's not exactly thriving in that position. And it's not just about the error against Brighton. He has given the ball away probably a bit more than you'd expect a player of his ability to do so. But it's such a demanding position, and it's such a demanding position under a Jurgen Klopp system too. So I wonder whether they will have a rethink about that. I think Thiago is getting closer and closer to being fit. You've obviously got Endo in there as well, who could come in and play a role. But Liverpool have continued this trend as well from last season of sloppy starts, falling behind, and kind of having to claw their way back into matches because of the firepower they have at their disposal. And I was quite alarmed already doing research on this game, but you have to go back to mid-May. And since then, they've managed just 2 clean sheets across all competitions, and they were at home to Villa and Saint-Gilloise this season. Their defence from set pieces has been relatively poor. They're giving up a lot of shots. They've been kind of conceding more shots this season for Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, Man United, Fulham, and Everton, amongst others. And actually, if you strip out penalties, they're also surprisingly below Everton in the expected goals rankings after 8 games in the Premier League season. So I don't think we can fault their sort of forward line, their options there. They should have Gakpo and Jota back available. They're just a little bit rough around the edges in defence and midfield, which may give Everton hope, optimism that they can bag a first win in front of supporters at Anfield since 1999. Obviously, they did so during the COVID era. Now, I don't normally value head-to-head records at all, really, in sort of day-to-day business, but I think in derby matches and some other certain fixtures, there is some significance, psychologically at least. And, I kind of doubts over the sort of Liverpool and their current construction, but they are the superior side, and Anfield is a fortress. And Everton have struggled here. The numbers are pretty astonishing. Since the start of 2018-19, Liverpool have lost 7 Premier League games at Anfield. 6 of those came in consecutive matches. During the COVID times, behind closed doors, it was Liverpool's worst ever home losing streak. Take those 6 games out. Everton were one of the winners in that sample. Take those 6 games out, and they've lost once at home in the Premier League over 5 seasons, nearly 6 years worth of football. And as we know, Everton's record here is abysmal. So I do fancy Liverpool to get the job done. I do fancy them to bounce back to winning ways. Everton have been better than their points tally would suggest at this stage of the season. But they were very comfortable against Bournemouth last time out, very good against Brentford in the last away day. Dyche has got close to his best 11 out against Bournemouth last time out, which is decent with Harrison fit, and Garner came in and looked really, really good. But I just looked at the way sort of Arsenal neutralised them, and I think it's fair to say that the schedule has been fairly kind for Everton so far this season, Arsenal being the obvious opponent that they face. But while Villa away, both of those 2 matches they lost without scoring. They've played 6 teams in 12th and below. So kind of balanced that out a little bit. And Dyche's first trip to Anfield with Everton ended in a 2-0 defeat. I think something similar could be in the offing in this sort of fixture. I think Liverpool have the quality with the starting 11 or off the bench to make their ability pay. But I just don't think it's going to be a complete washout for Everton either. So I'm going to pair Liverpool to win and under 4.5 goals, because we're getting close to even money here. It's 1.96 at the time of recording. I think that's a very fair price with so many different correct scores on your side. I think Everton can be competitive, but ultimately Liverpool are by far the superior side, in my opinion.
Okay, Liverpool and under 4.5 goals. I mean, incidentally, when we do put this out live, we will have the updated prices on Matchbook Insights, insights.matchbook.com. Adrian, of course, Arsenal could have, and probably should have beaten Liverpool in Anfield in the sample last season. On Everton, it was a massive, massive home win to get just before the international break, and it almost takes the pressure off Sean Dyche and the management, and maybe focus on how well maybe Everton can do this season and push up the table.
Yeah, I think they'd have been lifted massively by the performance, beating Bournemouth, one of their rivals at the bottom end of the table, so convincingly was impressive. They had 25 shots, 8 on target. This was most un-Everton-like at Goodison Park, certainly in recent memory anyway. So they've taken great heart from that. Also from their performance that Mark referenced as well at Brentford, where they were surprisingly excellent. So 2 out of their last 3 games, they've played pretty well. Obviously, sandwiched in between was a home loss against Luton. So they can head to Anfield with a bit more belief. And I do think that they can be competitive. Got a lot of players back fit now. And, Garner and Harrison have come into the team and are doing pretty well. So, I think they can make Liverpool work for it, for sure. I too would fancy Liverpool. You have to with that record, don't you? But I'm looking at the goals line and I'm sensing it's a bit high for a derby. I know that this season in the Premier League goals are up. We know you've got the extra injury time and whatnot. But for me, this doesn't feel like a game that's going to go over 3.5 goals. Some of the stats, I mean, Liverpool at home this season have scored 3 in every game. So that would maybe argue against it. They've won every single game, scored 3 goals in every game, but that kind of stat isn't going to last. I prefer to look at recent derbies. 5 of the last 6 Merseyside derbies at Anfield have gone under 2.5 goals, and home and away, Liverpool against Everton, 9 of the last 12 have gone under 2.5 goals. So, yeah, in recent years, during this Klopp era, Merseyside derbies have been low-scoring affairs. And I think we all know how Sean Dyche is going to approach this match. He's not going to be super expansive. He's not going to give up too many spaces. He will want to make Liverpool work very, very hard to get all 3 points. And I think that they can hold out to some degree. Yeah, I think that Mark's bet has an excellent chance of landing, but I also think that mine under 3.5 at a pretty good price for under 3.5 is also very tempting.
Yeah, it's a high goal line, like now that you say it, Adrian. Yeah, I'm going to lean towards Mark and Liverpool and under 4.5 goals, considering we are getting that boost of even money. But around 1.8 at time recording, as Adrian alluded to, under 3.5 goals does seem quite appealing, particularly given the way Sean Dyche was set up his team.
One stat that I should have referenced there as well, Daniel, was Everton. I think Mark sort of briefly touched on it. They've faced 60 shots in open play this season, Everton. That's 22 less than Liverpool. They haven't been as wide open as you would imagine, certainly not for a team that's been struggling for results. So they do know how to keep teams at arm's length. It's actually been at set pieces where they've really struggled. I think they've conceded four from corners and free kicks already this year. So yeah, Everton have it within them to restrict what is a brilliant Liverpool attack. Whether that will play out in the game itself, we'll have to wait and see. But they've got a chance.
Try telling that to someone who owns Jordan Pickford in fantasy, Adrian, and sold him before last week's first clean sheet of the season. So that's I did the right thing, but the wrong execution of points there. However, I digress. We will move on to look what I think is a fascinating game here, especially after an international break. Players getting back late, 3:00 Saturday. It's Manchester City versus Brighton. We'll take a look at the early betting that we have on Matchbook.com. Manchester City 142, currently Brighton 6.8. The draw is available at 5.2. Both teams to score, yes, heavily favoured in that market, around 1.54. The Asian handicap line sees Brighton get 1.25 goal head start. And the goal line, again, another high goal line here, 3.5. And those prices will fill out the week of the match. Adrian, go back to you on this one. And look, I want to give some sort of props to myself in the sense that us on the podcast, we identified these 3 to 4 away games in a row. They won one of them in Leipzig, but that was with Rodri. They lost all 3 without Rodri. They have Rodri back, of course, after the international break here. But it's a big few weeks for Manchester City. The fixture run is somewhat hard compared to the start of the season.
Yeah, and they've got some tough ones to come in the weeks to come as well, right up until sort of early December. They're the kind of fixtures that you could maybe predict 1 or 2 upsets in regards to Manchester City. So they've got to be careful. And this is a tough one, isn't it? To come out of the international break into 2 losses on the spin, of course. I think that the concern for them was the fact that they only had 4 shots in the entire match against Arsenal and no shots after the 58th minute. It was the lowest number of shots City had ever had in a Premier League match under Pep Guardiola. So it was unusual. I was there and I felt strangely comfortable. It was an odd situation. Normally you're living in fear when Manchester City come to town, but they were so narrow in the game. I think the way that they set up was quite easy to defend against at times. So I expect a slight rethink from Pep Guardiola. I think that Roberto De Zerbi will absolutely relish this. It's a big game in the career of Roberto De Zerbi because understandably he is being linked with the club. He's being linked as the possible successor to Pep Guardiola whenever that day comes where he leaves the Etihad. It does feel a pretty good fit. So look, if he can get a positive result here, De Zerbi, that might go some way towards impressing the hierarchy at that club. So this is going to be really interesting. I expect Brighton to come with a very good game plan, and I think the City might need to change things up a little bit. I was looking at under 3.5, which goes right against the grain as far as Brighton are concerned, because every match so far involving the Seagulls has gone over 3.5 goals.
It's a joke.
But, yeah, which is just crazy. But I just think with 2 of these 2 really smart coaches, 2 thinking coaches, sometimes it can turn into a chess match and sometimes they can cancel one another out a little bit. And I think there is a possibility of that happening here. And at 1.98, under 3.5 is a bet worth considering. I haven't gone with that. This is Manchester City after all, and I just can't see them losing 3 on the spin. Just can't see it. They are at home, so I will back them because Brighton aren't having a great time. We know what happened to them at Villa. They weren't especially impressive against Liverpool either. So, yeah, they're not at their best, and the Etihad is the hardest fixture in the calendar, isn't it? So, despite going to Man United last year and winning, going to Emirates and winning at the Etihad is a different kettle of fish, I think, for the Seagulls. So, I would lean towards Manchester City, but I'd have to still go with both teams to score because Brighton have scored in every game this season. Last year, when they went away to every team inside the top 8 last year, they scored. Brighton and Hove Albion, so they will believe they can do that again. It's just, can they keep Manchester City at bay? And I think, having been stung recently, City will bounce back here. So that's my pick, and I think the price isn't too bad actually. This is City at home, remember, so that's all. That almost always comes in. You've talked about both teams to score being very, very low. Well, look what it does to the price when you pair them together. I think that's a pretty solid selection, and I expect it to land.
Yeah, Mark, so that's Man City and both teams to score. Yes, Mark, you've ultimately landed on the same bet here. Is it for the same reasons? Obviously, we look at Brighton's away record. You've talked about a lot in the show, the amount of goals they've scored. I'm guessing you can see this being an open game. But just very briefly on what Adrian touched on there with the chess match potential, I think we did potentially see that the first 20, 25 minutes against Liverpool before the goal. Is there a danger there is any sort of a chess match, maybe the first half of this game?
Yeah, there could be. I think we'll get an idea about how this match might go from the Manchester City press conference before the game, because if you hear Pep Guardiola praising Roberto De Zerbi for his style, his approach, it normally tells you that he kind of fancies his chances here, because he's done it against the likes of Bielsa and Sarri in the past when he's been kind of coaching on the continent. It means Pep's confident and he admires the opposition coach, but also that stylistically he feels this team will match up pretty well to the challenge. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case, because last year City did win this fixture 3-1 with De Zerbi in charge, but Brighton were brilliant that day and probably didn't deserve to lose by 2 goals. They could have easily got something out of that fixture. And as we've seen, as Adrian's already outlined in the past 12 months, how dangerous they can be. Liverpool found that out before the break. City won't be obviously as clever as West Ham and Aston Villa against Brighton. They'll play their own game. But ultimately, the quality that they have at their disposal should come to the fore. And you look at the team news coming into this fixture, having Rodri back is immense. We highlighted his numbers before the match against Arsenal, with and without, and it looks like they should have pretty much a fully fit squad bar De Bruyne, or a fully fit and an available squad by him. So I do expect a reaction. It's not often City go through these kind of slumps. And yeah, Brighton, they still look like they're adjusting to the new rhythm of playing domestically and European football twice a week. There has been a lot of disruption with injuries themselves, inconsistency in selection. De Zerbi made 36 changes across his last 5 matches, and that's a huge amount of upheaval in the camp. He does like to rotate anyhow, but that's a huge amount. So, yeah, we know they pack a punch anyway. They're cavalier, they're adventurous, they're brave on the ball, their pressing is superb, as Liverpool discovered. They're very good from set pieces too, transitions, turnovers. There's many different ways in which Brighton can hurt you, and I expect Man City to win this match. But yeah, absolutely, I want Brighton to get on the score sheet too. And just look at the numbers: 40 Premier League games now under De Zerbi. They've failed to score just 4 times. They're averaging 2.05 goals themselves per game, which is incredible over such a long sample. Away from home, they've scored in 18 of 19 under De Zerbi, averaging 2 goals per game away from home. Again, just astonishing numbers. And what's quite incredible really is, of those 4 times they failed to score in 40 under De Zerbi, 3 of them came in his first 4 fixtures. So they've actually only failed to score once in 36 Premier League games. They scored away at every Big 6 club under De Zerbi last season and this. So, it's not asking a huge amount for them to get on the score sheet, but Man City to win. So that increase from City of 142 to win the game, that increase from BTTS from 154 to include the both together at 244 just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like it. Definitely price-wise. Yeah, 242. We're locking in Manchester City win and both teams score yes versus Brighton at home. We're going to go to the third game that we're going to cover. It's the 5:30 kickoff. Chelsea at home to Arsenal. Take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. A reminder, we are recording this over the international break. Briefly before I do, wanted to look at the Premier League outrights, then lead into the Chelsea-Arsenal game. So after that, Arsenal win. City out to 181, which it seems quite backable if you are a Man City believer. Arsenal 5.4. Liverpool out a tad 7.0. Incidentally, Arsenal and Liverpool were the same price going into the weekend's game, or the previous weekend's game. So that's one to watch. And Tottenham 14.5. They are playing very well. They're giving me Arsenal last season vibes, guys, but we'll see on that. And move on to Chelsea versus Arsenal. Chelsea currently 3.3 at home to Arsenal, who are the favourites at 2.26. The draw is available at 3.55. Both teams to score yes is around 1.66 currently. The Asian handicap line sees Chelsea get a quarter goal head start, and the goal line for this is 2.5. So Mark, I know you don't have a too strong opinion on this game. Maybe briefly on those outright prices. It is always an interesting market and a fun market to watch each week. I always sort of look on it on a Monday morning. Well, then going into this game, it's a big game for Arsenal. They want to continue the momentum from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, Spurs won't win the title. We can say that right now. It's nice to look at them.
So you're laying them at a 15.0 on the Matchbook Betting Exchange?
I wouldn't be laying it, but they're not going to win the title. I'd still be with Man City at that price. There's been a lot of criticism and inquests into what's happened recently and what hasn't gone their way or what has. And Arsenal were the better team last week. City weren't very good. It was a weird kind of game. But if you kind of just crystallise it to the goal that was scored as a deflection from a shot outside the box, if that game had ended 0-0, you probably would have said, fair enough. Like, Arsenal couldn't have been massively frustrated by not winning that match. City would have accepted a 0-0, and then probably the inquests wouldn't be quite so intense. But we did discuss, not just this season, but the start of last season too, that City have sort of thinned their squad out a fair bit. And when you do get a couple of injuries, suddenly that squad doesn't look quite so formidable. And you've seen how important Rodri is. So interested to see where they go from here and what they do in January, if anything. But as we know of Man City, what happens right now is kind of irrelevant, really. It's what they do after Christmas, where they just come like a train and manage to just reel teams in regardless of where they are in the league table. So yeah, interesting. I would be a backer at City at 1.8 at the minute. In terms of this match, I found it quite difficult from a betting perspective. I don't really disagree with any of the prices or lines. I'm still not a trustworthy place with Chelsea. I know the narrative has been that they've been much better than their results suggested, and according to the data, that's true. But you have to look at the schedule too, and it's been relatively kind from a Chelsea perspective. And I know they've got back-to-back wins now and scoring goals, but there's still a long road ahead. I think the win against Burnley was significant for a couple of factors, really. They came from behind to win for the first time in the Premier League in over a year. It was also their biggest league win since April 2022, and Raheem Sterling picked up the early season form he had as well with a nice goal and 2 assists. So again, it has to be caveated by the fact that Burnley have been nowhere near the expectations we had for them at the start of the season. Fulham are definitely a bottom half dweller and completely failed to show up in the derby the previous Monday. So this match at Arsenal will give us a much clearer indication of where Chelsea are, whether the green shoots and recovery talk are fair and accurate. And I think for Arsenal, they probably would have wished this game to have taken place immediately after the Man City match, but we've had an international break in between. Saka, we hoped, will be fit. He is almost always fit. So to see him miss out on the squad in the last fixture wasn't a huge surprise because we expected it, but it was the first time since May 2021, I believe, he'd missed a match, which is astonishing, really. Martinelli will be okay. We expect Trossard to be perhaps in contention there as well, but Arsenal won't be far off their best 11, and their away record since the start of last season has been exceptional too. So, comfortably the best in the division, winning consistently, and they're winning at Stamford Bridge consistently recently too. Is it 3 wins on the spin away at Chelsea, which is kind of unheard of where they were probably a decade or so ago. So the fear factor's gone there. There's a level of confidence. But what's most impressed me about Arsenal, we've talked about it many times in the last 12 months, but has been their defensive record on the road. 13 clean sheets and 22 away games since the start of last season, just 0.82 goals per game conceded. Only 6 sides have managed to score 2 goals or more at home against Arsenal since the start of last year, which is very, very impressive. And I wouldn't be too fearful of facing that Chelsea forward line at the minute. So, yeah, I would favour Arsenal. I think the price is probably fair, but just a bit wary of where Chelsea are at the minute. I'm not too sure where they're at. So I've kind of gone down the route of opposing goals, because I think if Arsenal do win this game, it's probably going to be fairly narrow. 3 of Chelsea's first 4 at the Bridge have gone under. 2 of Arsenal's first 3 away have gone under. It's not a game I'm going to be heavily involved in, but I do fancy Arsenal to probably sneak it in a low-scoring game. So, but I just think under 2.5 goals, I just get a bit more on side with the potential 0-0, 1-1, and even a shock Chelsea win as well. So, yeah, under 2.5 goals at 183, but I probably won't be involved.
Yeah, small lean from Mark there on the unders 2.5 goals, currently around the 1.8 mark. And Adrian, Mark alluded to Stamford Bridge and Arsenal's record there. There used to be a time Arsenal went only a couple of years ago with fear going to Stamford Bridge, and I'd say the last couple of results mean it's probably the opposite going into this game on Saturday.
Yeah, look, it's a lucky ground at the moment. 1-3 in a row at Stamford Bridge. Arsenal have actually beaten Chelsea in 6 of the last 7 meetings in all competitions. So yeah, Arsenal have had the upper hand against the Blues in recent times. It certainly wasn't always that way, was it? Not when Drogba was around, that's for sure. But the away form is so strong, barely concede any goals on the road. And yeah, I do think that Raheem Sterling is in terrific form. I mean, that was an outstanding performance against Burnley. Involved in all 4 goals. He ran amok really down that left-hand side. So he'll be a handful. You've got Cole Palmer on the other side, possibly Nicholas Jackson up front. We'll see. But I would back Arsenal to be able to contain them. In midfield, I see it as Chelsea's strength, but Arsenal are very powerful in there now, with Rice, possibly Thomas Partey in there, with Ødegaard as well. I think that's a unit that can handle Chelsea's strongest unit. And then when I look further forward, I absolutely fancy Arsenal up against the Chelsea defence. I know that the stats will tell you that they've not been especially leaky, but I think that Chelsea are get-atable out the back at the moment. And I think that Arsenal have the quality and backed up by the control that midfield will supply to have enough chances to go and win the game. It's not a gimme. It's always going to be a tough game away at Chelsea, but I do fancy Arsenal to win it. 2.26 is a fair price. I agree with Mark. And of all the 3 scenarios, I would say that this has the most likely outcome. I think this is the most likely outcome. It could be a draw, and of course Chelsea could win, but I would say that Arsenal are a level above Chelsea in the here and now, and that hopefully with Martinelli, Saka, Saliba, and co fully fit, they can go there and improve on this outstanding record at the Bridge. So yes, I'm gonna go with my old team here and back them. Chelsea, even though they've been better the last few games, haven't been great over quite a long period now at Stamford Bridge. They've already lost 1-0 at home to Villa, already lost 1-0 at home to Forest. It doesn't feel a massive stretch to imagine that they'll also lose to Arsenal.
Yeah, it does have a feel of 1-0 to the Arsenal potential. Do keep an eye on those injuries up to date right before placing your bet if you are listening later in the week. So I'm going to lock that in as the podcast bet Arsenal. 2.26 away to Chelsea at the time of recording. And we'll go to a Super Sunday at 4:30. I'm going to rate this 3.5 out of 10 because we only have the one game on Super Sunday. Although it's quite a decent Villa West Ham. So look, Sky don't help themselves with these one game a week. I'm surprised Villa West Ham put on a Sunday when it's not a European game. I know their fans are sick of Sundays already, but I digress and move on. Villa odds on at home to West Ham, 197. We'll get to that price in a minute. West Ham 395. The same price is the draw. Both teams to score, yes, in the early market here is 1.6. I'll go out a little bit. And the goal line is 2.5, with West Ham getting a half a goal head start in the Asian handicap line. Adrian, I want to get this to you because it kind of coincides with your bet, but I was watching the West Ham Newcastle game or catching the highlights. David Moyes has built a brilliant squad here. There was people talking after the Conference League that he should, leave. It won't get any better than this. But I have a sneaky suspicion this could be a fantastic season for West Ham.
Yeah, it's been surprisingly good. I think most of us expected there to be a downturn, but maybe the absence of such a key man has just sort of focused minds on what they need to do better as a team. There was too much reliance maybe on him to keep saving the day. And yeah, they've reinforced. Obviously, Paqueta has really come to the fore. He looks top class, doesn't he? Alvarez and Ward-Prowse have settled in great. And yeah, they look a good team. They do. You think about it, they've only actually lost this season to Manchester City and Liverpool, West Ham. So they'll go to Villa Park full of confidence. And I'll tell you why they'll also be confident. They have Villa's bogey team. So, you shouldn't always look into these things. I know Mark doesn't always believe in that. It's more about the current form, and as it should be. But they are unbeaten, West Ham, in the last 10 matches against Aston Villa, which was a big surprise to me. They tend to go there and to put on a bit of a show. And I do think stylistically as well, Villa might not like it up against West Ham. I think they like it when teams come onto them, Villa, where they can steal the ball and then break very quickly and use the pace of Diaby and Watkins to really hurt them on the counters. I don't think West Ham are going to do that. I think that West Ham are going to let Villa have it. And I don't think we see the best of Villa when they're possession heavy. We don't see the best of their strikers when they have loads and loads of the ball. So even though West Ham are playing some maybe better football this season and they're not averse to having it, I think that Moyes will be shrewd enough to say, actually, in this game, let's play on that counter like we did at Brighton and let's pick them off. And I do think that West Ham can make this very, very competitive. I've gone with West Ham plus half a goal. Look, the price for a Villa win, and Villa are on a massive hot streak. Remember, I think they've won 10 in a row in the Premier League at Villa Park. It's astonishing how consistent they've been, but these runs never last forever. And if ever it's going to come to an end, it might be against the team they've not beaten in the last 10 outings. That's my thinking anyway. 1.96 you can get on Villa to win the game. Well, for the draw and West Ham to win, you can get 1.92, covering a lot more score lines. And that's the reason I'm going to take it. I just think that this is a game where Villa might just trip up because West Ham seem to have a good thing going. The only concern for the Hammers is a lack of clean sheets, just one so far. Sheffield United at home, as you might have expected. So they do need to tighten up a bit, but they've scored more goals this season. A riceless West Ham seems to be a slightly more adventurous West Ham, and I think they're capable going to Villa Park and scoring once, twice, maybe 3 times. So yeah, West Ham plus a half for me.
Okay, yeah, and particularly with money late in the week. Reminder, we are recording this over the international break. That price could push out a little bit, so keep an eye on Matchbook Insights in terms of the correct price on Thursday morning. Mark, over to you on this one, Villa versus West Ham. Just a little bit on West Ham. I know you haven't been quite as strong as Adrian, at least at the start of the season. Are you beginning to see some of the stuff that David Moyes is trying to build, or at least that squad I thought was particularly impressive against Newcastle at times?
Yeah, absolutely. Already kind of ripped up my pre-season expectations on West Ham to be involved in a relegation battle. They'll be nowhere near it. So, they will be pushing top half, and I've been very impressed. I think the business they did in the summer was exceptional, actually. I kind of doubted West Ham's ability to go out and spend that money, in a smart manner, but they've done it superbly. So, delighted to see them do well. In fairness, I do like David Moyes. Gets a hard time of it, but been very impressed. And I think this is a fascinating game. I guess my only criticism about Moyes kind of came home to roost again against Newcastle before the international break is that West Ham ranked first in terms of the half-time table for points earned. They've led at half-time in 5 of the first 8 games. They've not trailed at half-time this season, but in the second half table, they're right down in 14th. And it's kind of a moan I've had about Moyes for a long time, really, is he has this tendency to sit on a lead, be a bit sleepy, be a bit passive, maybe his pragmatism kind of coming through, and they're getting punished a bit too often, really. We saw it against Newcastle, really. They coughed up a good position and you're sort of battling back to try and get into the game again. So that would be an issue. I guess this match, there is a potential for both teams to kind of cancel each other out. And we talked about it in other matches, really, but both coaches probably do have an element of pragmatism about them. Both probably do prefer a bit to play on the counter-attacking in transitions. But I just think Aston Villa at home at Villa Park, with that record that Adrian talked about, should be taking a front foot approach here. They did probably start a little bit slowly against Wolves before the break, but then sharpened up after conceding and probably could have won it late on with Ollie Watkins hitting the woodwork as well. So Villa Park is where they feel most confident. That winning streak is exceptional. It's 12 wins from 16 home league games under Emery overall, averaging 2.38 goals. In 12 of those 16 games, we saw over 2.5 goals bank. That's going to be my selection for this match, because I do think Villa score. I think West Ham will have their opportunities and have enough quality now in that team to take those opportunities. But I think defensively, there are still question marks over both teams. And we've seen both teams score land in 7 of West Ham's first 8, which is, a highly unusual stat you'd associate with a David Moyes team. 5 of those 8 games have gone over 3.5 goals. They've scored in every match. They've scored twice or more in 5 of those fixtures. And as Adrian says, the only clean sheet was at home to Sheffield United, which kind of doesn't really count at the minute, does it, the way Blades are playing? So, I think West Ham will score. I fully expect Aston Villa to score. And I think if you look at the raw numbers in terms of goals per game output and over 2.5 goal hit rates, etc., they all look pretty strong. But it's very much in line with the expected goals outputs too for both teams. So for Villa, we've got 6 of 8 going over 2.5 goals, 7 of 8 seeing BTTS. Sorry, that's at West Ham. And actually, if you exclude penalties, the XG numbers are coming in at sort of 3.4 for both teams, really. And obviously, they both scored combined in 15 of 16 and managed just 3 clean sheets between them. So I think over 2.5 goals and both teams to score would be where I'm heading here. Obviously, the potential for both teams to cancel each other out. But you look at the attacking talent on show, Watkins, Zaniolo, Diaby, Kudus, Paqueta, Bowen, etc., etc. There's loads of players here who could make an impact. So hopefully we'll get quite an exciting, entertaining game, and perhaps that Super Sunday rating you gave might be a little bit low down.
Yeah, my ratings haven't worked out very well this year at all. We could be binning that segment soon enough, to be fair. 3.5 is still the line I'm taking on the out of 10. So out of 5 effectively with Villa versus West Ham. But I agree. I think it could be a fun game. However, I am going to lean towards Adrian and West Ham. I just have a sneaky suspicion Moyes will have something up his sleeve. That's West Ham plus half a goal, 192. And again, keep an eye on the Matchbook Betting Exchange for that liquid markets to increase that price perhaps. We're going to move on to just other Premier League bets before we get into EFL. Adrian, you have a selection here. Bournemouth versus Wolves. Gives us a chance to talk about Wolves and Areola and how it's gone. I think it's fascinating. I actually just Googled Areola sack to see was there any sort of news stories. Bournemouth seem determined to stick with their guns here and stick with their man. But at some point, I guess you got to maybe question the signing. How early do you maybe make that call? And then going into this game against Wolves, what's your fancy here?
Yeah, it's not gone to plan. I mean,
no,
he had a very good record in his previous club, Vallecano, and yeah, he's a highly sought after coach, and it felt like they had upgraded on Gary O'Neill, but it hasn't looked that way so far. I mean, I was really surprised when I watched the Arsenal game, worked on that. They just didn't lay a glove on Arsenal, and obviously to then go to Everton and get pulverized by them was alarming. And I think that their confidence is very low at the moment. So the international break is going to provide Areola with the players that are left behind to work exceptionally hard on his principles, on getting everything now down, because they're not executing what he's asking them to do well enough at the moment. The reason I don't need to really go into this too much. This is more of a feel bet, if I'm being perfectly honest. My feel is that Bournemouth are massively low on confidence and are the second weakest team in the division right now, probably just narrowly in front of Sheffield United. But it's about Gary O'Neill. Gary O'Neill will not want to be beaten in this game. He will not accept defeat in this game. I think that his Wolves team are playing significantly better than Bournemouth. I've been quite impressed with them. By and large, they're much more exciting to watch. Obviously, Neto is one of the form players in the division. Hwang has been knocking the goals in. Cunha looks a lot more exciting this season than he did previously. They got 2 tigers in the middle of the pitch as well, Gomez and Lamina that rat around, and at the back, partnerships are building. There's quite a regular unit in defence. Jose Sarr in goals just signed a new contract, so there are lots of reasons to feel quite positive, I think, if you're a Wolves fan at the minute. And with just the Gary O'Neill factor, can you imagine how determined he's going to be to walk away with his head held exceptionally high at the full-time whistle? I don't think they get beat here. I just don't think they get beat, which is why I want to back Wolves plus a quarter goal. No, it's not a mega price, at 1.75, but I feel that they can go there and at least get a draw. And if they get a draw or win the game, we get paid out.
Okay, yeah, Wolves plus quarter of a goal, 175 currently away to Bournemouth. Your other one is from the Championship. Two teams not in good form, particularly obviously Sheffield Wednesday, bottom of the table. So both teams to score no seems a pretty safe bet to me.
Well, yeah, no such thing as a safe bet, is there? But look, Watford entertain Sheffield Wednesday. I see both teams to score no coming in. I mean, a lot of this is down to Sheffield Wednesday. Failed to score in 7 of their 11 Championship matches so far. They just look really short on quality. They're good players at League One level, but it's a step up. The manager's gone. Xisco Munoz. There's still a crisis behind the scenes. We think a new coach is coming in from Germany, sort of unproven. So, a new coach will almost certainly be in situ here. And if they are, they'll be working on keeping things very tight. First game away from home, former Premier League club in Watford. The focus will be on shape and solidity and defensive ideas. So I think that Wednesday aren't going to go there and be absolutely gung-ho. Watford have blanked in 5 of 11 matches this season. At Vicarage Road, this bet wins in 4 of 6 matches so far. And I've looked at the both teams to score record this season for both clubs. That they're joint second in terms of the fewest times it's landed this season. Just 36% of Watford matches and Sheffield Wednesday matches have seen both teams score. And that there are very low averages, particularly in Sheffield Wednesday matches, in terms of total goals scored. I mean, their games are averaging just about 2, just slightly over for the Owls. So I see this being very cagey. Watford aren't playing great, but they'll probably have enough to win this 1 or 2-0. If they have an off day, this could be 0-0 or it might even be a shock. But yeah, I think both teams will score no. It's a standout for me in the Championship.
Okay, 185 the current price on matchbook.com, and Mark heading to the Bundesliga, not an over 2.5 goals angle. This is a rarity picking a team on the 90 minutes market, but I guess you see a lot of juice in Freiburg's price right now at the time of recording, 178.
Yeah, definitely. They look like a very solid option. A team who were in contention for a Champions League qualifying place last season. Tremendously consistent last year, Christian Streich and his team. It's been a little bit more erratic this time around, but if you look at their record so far this season, the 3 defeats they've suffered all came against top 4 teams. Against the rest of the Bundesliga, Freiburg are 3 wins, 1 draw, 0 defeats, conceding just 1 goal. Now, if we go back to the start of last year, Freiburg have a 60% win rate at home in the Bundesliga, as well as averaging 2 points per game, which is very, very strong. If we turn that 60% win rate into implied odds, it would give us a 1.67 shot. Now, they're hosting Bochum, who are just wretched on the road before the international break. They somehow managed to escape RB Leipzig with a 0-0 draw. Leipzig missed 2 penalties in that match and had countless other opportunities to score. They didn't. Bochum nicked a 0-0. They've actually lost 67% of their away days under their current management, who came in towards the start of last year. They failed to score in 11 of those 21 away days as well. And if you looked at that 67% loss rate and turned it into implied odds, you get a 1.5 shot. So in sort of both metrics there, we're looking at a value price here in Freiburg to win the game. But what's most interesting, I think, to me so far this season is Bochum have played 4 away games. They've averaged 0.75 expected goals. They've given up 3.15 XG per game. So that's returning a negative supremacy differential of 2.4 expected goals per game, which is a huge figure. Across all venues, no side is facing more shots on target, or shots in the box than Bochum. So they're going to be up against it here. Freiburg are a very streetwise team, a very well-coached team. I just think anything close to 1.8 is a value price here, down to 1.7.
Okay, Freiburg there. Strong case from Mark in the Bundesliga, 178. We will move on to best long shots, and I have to give props to Mark. He landed both teams to score no, Shrewsbury versus Northampton, but he did also have 0-0 in the best long shot section. A 91st minute goal cost him there. So Mark, huge hard luck there, but a great show nonetheless. You're looking at correct score in a game we've covered already, City versus Brighton. It's a scoreline I can see happening, in which case the price I'm looking at here seems a tad overpriced perhaps.
It does look big, doesn't it? 11.0 for Man City to win this match 3-1. I think it was the scoreline that the two teams played out at the Etihad last season.
Yeah.
City getting Rodri back at the Etihad, eager to sort of right the wrongs of the last few weeks. They should score a couple of goals here at least. And as we've already discussed, you expect Brighton to get on the score sheet as well. So 10-1, 11.0 on a 3-1 just feels like a very reasonable option for a long shot. So, yeah, I'm quite keen to sort of get involved in this.
Okay, 11.0, as Mark alluded to there. Interesting what that will be come kickoff. And Adrian, I'm sort of liking this one as an angle of attack here, particularly after an international break. You sometimes get inconsistent results. It's Luton Town away to Nottingham Forest. You think they're a tad overpriced as well?
Yeah, it's not as big a long shot as Mark's selection, but at 5-1, 6.0, Luton Town look decent value, I think, at Nottingham Forest. They did win, of course, at Everton, so they've got that first victory under their belts. I just think every time I watch Luton, they seem to improve a little bit. They're finding their feet at this level. Some of the stats around Alfie Doughty, the wing back, are exceptional in terms of the deliveries that he's putting into the box. They're asking questions of opponents on quite a consistent basis now, and I think they'll have chances against Forest. I think that one of Luton's obvious strengths is set pieces. They score from 2 of them at Goodison. And Forest are not good at defending corners. They weren't last year. They haven't been this season. They've conceded 4 set-piece goals already, which is a joint high in the division. Forest at home haven't really got going yet. I know it was a real fortress last year, but they weren't that good against Burnley. Could easily have lost the game. They were the second best at home to Brentford as well, who created a lot of chances. Maybe lucky to get a draw in that one. And they needed a last-minute winner, didn't they, to see off Sheffield United earlier on in the campaign. And this is a big factor for me, Tayo Awoniyi is out. He's out for a month, which means Chris Wood will probably lead the line. Chris Wood's a good player, but he's not Awoniyi. For me, Forest it builds so much around his power and strength at the top end of the pitch, and his absence, I think, will be felt. So I just think Luton, although deservedly underdogs for the game, have a shot here. They've only conceded 5 goals in their last 4 Premier League matches. Forest haven't been full of goals themselves. I think Luton can keep this tight and maybe nick it. 6.0, that's my long shot.
Yeah, I definitely feel Forest missed Awani away at Palace there. So yeah, I think that is a pretty decent angle, to be fair, Adrian. And it's an angle you'll obviously be using in your best bets. Just incidentally, before we go on, we touched on the best bet records, but if you did base £20 stake on every bet, including 2% commission on the Matchbook betting exchange, invariably you will be getting best price. You'll be up plus £161. So well done to anyone out there who's done that. Adrian, it's a similar angle, and it's probably built on Forest's potentially injuries up front and also Luton's defence over the last 4 games you alluded to there.
Yeah, I'm putting a lot on this game, actually.
Yeah, it's all Forest Luton.
Yeah, but Forest without Awoniyi is a big miss. They haven't got going at home. I think they've been a little bit underwhelming in terms of their performance levels. And they just don't look full of goals. He can't quite make his mind up whether to play with the 2 wingers, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, or reconfigure the attacks in a different way. And I think that's affected their ability to hurt teams. Forest matches have averaged just 2.28 goals this season. That's the second lowest figure in the Premier League. Well, Luton are the 4th lowest figure in terms of their matches, 2.63 goals per game. And they will set their stall out here. They'll keep things tight. They'll be defensive in their shape and look to hurt them from crosses into the box and from set pieces. Just looking at under 3.5 goals. I know that's not the angle here, but 7 of 8 games for both sides have gone under 3.5 goals. So they've been involved in pretty tight, cagey games throughout the campaign so far. The 2 of them collide here. It's a big game for both teams. Neither will want to lose against a potential relegation rival. I see this. I think a lot of people will surely agree here. I don't see this being a goal fest. So under 2.5 goals at a backable price of 1.83 feels good. The last 5 matches involving Steve Cooper's Forest have all gone under 2.5. And obviously Luton last time out against Spurs, against Wolves, games like that, they all went unders as well.
Okay, seems a solid pick. Under 2.5 goals, 183. And Mark, speaking of solid picks, over 2.5 goals in the Bundesliga has seemed to be a solid pick throughout the season, and you're going back to the well again.
Yeah, another game involving Augsburg as well. So they
Yes.
were beaten 2-1 by Darmstadt before the international break at home, which led to Enrique Marzin's sacking. It was the 6th time in 7 games this season they've seen over 2.5 goals click. 5 of those 7 have seen BTTS bank as well. And yeah, despite the coaching change, I think we can sort of foresee more of the same really when they go to Heidenheim, newly promoted Heidenheim, because Augsburg traditionally are poor travellers in the Bundesliga, just 3 wins and 14 defeats in 20 away days, going back to the start of last season. It's a stint that's kind of straddled 2 previous coaches, so I'm not expecting it to iron out very quickly. But goals have always been prominent in Augsburg games, especially away from home. 14 of those 20 going over, 11 of those 20 going over 3.5, 14 seeing BTTS, and Augsburg keeping just 1 clean sheet on their travels. So yeah, they're going to Heidenheim, newly promoted Heidenheim, who've now won their last 2 home games. They've also conceded 2 goals or more in 6 of their first 7 since promotion. And their defensive data, which I touched on a few weeks back, is absolutely atrocious. All 7 of their opponents since promotion have produced an expected goals value of 2.0 or more. They've conceded at least 6 shots on target in 6 of those 7 games as well. So that should encourage Augsburg. Fully expect both teams to oblige, because Heidenheim have netted themselves in 5 of 7, including all 3 of their home fixtures. Both sides will see this as a winnable opportunity, which I always think kind of breathes into a kind of more open, expansive, entertaining match. And if you look at the sort of raw numbers together, the 2 teams have scored in 10 of their combined 14 fixtures. They've managed just 1 clean sheet between them. They've conceded 2 goals or more in 12 of those 14 matches. And over 3.5 goals has been a winning selection in half of those 14, let alone over 2.5 goals, which has landed in 10 of 14. So over 2.5 goals at 1.74 between Heidenheim and Augsburg.
Solid case as always from Mark O'Haire. So that's over 2.5 goals. Heidenheim versus Augsburg, currently at 174. Interesting what that price will become closer to kickoff. And my thanks to Mark and Adrian. Insights.matchbook.com, full recap of all the guys' picks. As I mentioned, we are recording this a little bit earlier, not as live, so do check out the latest prices there. And we'll be back on Monday with Miguel, keeping Champions League match day 3 with some interesting ties after last week's results, or last match day's results in the Champions League. Until then, enjoy the weekend if you're having a bet. We will chat to you on Monday. Bye bye.